I want to welcome you to another Clinton Candidates Debate sponsored by the League of Women Voters. The League is a nonpartisan organization that never supports nor opposes candidates or political parties. We do urge citizens to take an active part in their government, especially to exercise their right to vote. A basic right. If we treasure this right, we will make informed decisions when we go to the polls. To help you make an informed decision, we are holding this debate today for the primary election. The election will be April 6th, and it's time to get to know the candidates. On the ballot will be candidates for the Republican Party only in order to narrow the field to one candidate per position who will appear on the ballot in the general election. The Democratic Party already has just one person per position. The candidates you will hear from today are running for the position of Alderperson-At-Large, representing all the citizens of our city. Let's meet the candidates now. Our first on the left is Ramey Ford, and on the right is Dr. Ricky Garrett. Thank you both for being here today. We appreciate this. Serving as our moderator is longtime Clintonian and news director at iHeartRadio, Randy Bell. Hello, Randy. Serving as our timekeepers are League members Marianne Everett and Carolyn Towns. The videographer is Mark Jones, Clinton's Director of Communications, with his intern, Carly Culpepper, serving as his assistant for videography. We thank the City of Clinton for letting us use this facility at Brighton Park. You will note that we are following COVID protocol and we have very few in the audience. For the debate format, candidates, we will give you 2 minutes each for your opening statement. You will be asked several questions by Randy Bell and give a closing statement. They will be allowed 1 minute if you wish to respond to the other candidates' responses. And we'll give you an opportunity of one response to the response for each question. A drawing was held a few minutes ago for the order of speaking. And now, that's all the rules. We're ready to get to know our candidates. Randy, it's all yours.
Thanks, Kay. And as Kay mentioned, we've been following COVID-19 protocols. We all were masked up earlier, but now that we're ready to start the debate, we're unmasking so that you can hear us a little more plainly. And as Kay also mentioned, there was a drawing of lots here before we started to determine who goes first with the opening statements, and Dr. Ricky Garrett will go first.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my honor to be here today as your Alderman at Large, or as my oldest son likes to say, Alderman Rhino. It is certainly important to all of us who live in Clinton, whether we are longtime Clintonians or whether we're new to the city, to be safe. And Clinton recently did become the third safest city in the state of Mississippi. So we're very proud of that. But we still have a ways to go. All of us, I think, want our children to be at the most wonderful schools that they possibly can be at. We want good infrastructure in our city, whether it's the roads or bridges or if it's the sewer system. We want it the best it can be. We want to be in wonderful housing in great neighborhoods. We want to have recreational and cultural opportunities in our city. And finally, probably as important as anything else, we want to be able to dine and shop in our own city. And we have made considerable progress in those areas in the last 4 years. However, we still have a ways to go in many areas. The role of the Alderman at Large is not just to vote for what's in the best interest of the city, but to bring consensus among the other board members on doing the things that are most important to the citizens of Clinton. We're the legislative body, so it's not our responsibility to just rubber stamp the agenda of the mayor.
All right, an opening statement now from Mr. Ramey Ford.
Yes, thank you for having me today. First, I want to say congratulations to the Clinton High School boys basketball team on recently winning the 6A state championship. I know they've worked hard, and that is one heck of a feat to accomplish that, especially in 6A. But again, I am Randy Ford, and I'm running for Alderperson-At-Large here in Clinton. My wife and I lived here for 21 years, and we raised $3 that went through the Clinton public school system. I have been the Parks Director for the City of Tupelo, the City of Jackson, the City of Brandon, and also for several years I was the Director of Mississippi State Parks. And the reason I mention that is because that particular agency is bigger than the operation of the City of Clinton. So I've managed more full-time people and a bigger budget than actually Clinton has. And so I do know municipal government, I know state government. And of course, there are things that everybody wants to see done in our city. But I will specifically focus on public safety, economic development, and parks and recreation. I definitely want to be an alderman that gets along with all the other aldermen and mayor. We need to be very active as the aldermen representing the entire city, to listen to all of the stakeholders that come to the table on various issues. And so I will always support progressive, positive things for the city of Clinton.
All right, thank you. And we'll move on now to questions prepared by the League of Women Voters. And Mr. Ford will get the first question. And it kind of builds on some of the things you've talked about already in your opening statements. Give us a little more detail about specific qualifications and experience that would actually make you the best person for this job you're seeking, Mr. Ford.
Well, yeah, as far as qualifications, being in municipal government, even though one of the positions was a statewide position, but it's still municipal. And dealing with the legislators, dealing with aldermen, mayors. I've had 5 different mayors. I've had 3 different governors. So I understand what it takes to work not only with the employees, but with each other as a group, as a commission, and do the things that the citizens expect us to do. And a lot of that is listening to the needs. And as I go around knocking on doors, everybody says something about retail. Everybody says something about safety, and we're all for that. Parks and recreation facilities need to be improved, and I can talk about that a little bit later as well. But just in analyzing my opponent's voting record, I found that on key issues, I would have voted differently. And I think that's important for our viewers to understand. Transparency is a key. I know on one particular issue, she voted against the public hearing twice. And I don't understand that. Even if the public hearing would have brought out something that would not have changed your vote, I don't understand why the people cannot get an opportunity to be heard. So I'm going to be full transparent. Anytime that the public needs to know something about what's going on, they can call me, email me, I will respond. It may not be the answer they want. If we can't do it, I will politely tell them we can't do it, we can't afford it, or I will tell them that I disagree with it. But as far as not having the public have an opportunity to come and voice their opinion about some specific item in the city, I just don't understand that.
All right, Dr. Garrett, you'll have obviously a chance to respond to that in a moment. But first, talk a little bit more about your qualifications and experience as it relates to this job here in Clinton.
Well, as you know, I have served as Alderman-At-Large and Mayor Pro Tem of Clinton for the past 4 years. I am a longtime board member, having served a 12-year term on the Board of Trustees of state institutions of higher learning governing the 8 public universities in the state of Mississippi. I've served on numerous other local, state, and national boards during the course of my career. I'm a longtime businesswoman who has managed some healthcare associations in the state. And I'm an experienced lobbyist who, over my long career in public service, have built partnerships between government, healthcare, education, and the business community. And all of that experience in education and healthcare and government, and my experience as a businesswoman, I think, helped me to be uniquely qualified for this role. I also, since I was elected Alderperson-At-Large, have made a considerable effort to continue to be educated and learn about municipal government. I have just recently been designated by the Mississippi Municipal League as a certified municipal official, and I have also served 2 terms on the Mississippi Municipal League Board of Directors, which enables me to both network with my fellow public officials and also to learn from those public officials.
Mr. Ford, you have 60 seconds for a follow-up.
Could I respond?
Well, we'll let him follow up, and you'll get a response after that. How about that?
All right, thank you.
Well, I can certainly commend her for being on those boards, and I can list a lot of boards that I have been on. They range from flood control, from the Pearl River Valley Water Basin District to the reservoir, to the waterway, to the Clinton Park Advisory Board, and I could go on and on about those. But our employees have to have certification to maintain different levels of their job, from police and fire to public works. And I think we ought to take the travel money that's allocated for the aldermen and give it to the departments. Our certification process is at the voting booth, and we don't have to have certification as aldermen to maintain it. We would be elected to that. So I would be for moving all of the aldermen's money in travel to the departments, because they have to maintain that certification.
All right, Dr. Garrett, you have a response now? You have a minute?
Yes, I do. First of all, I can't understand why Mr. Ford believes that I would ever vote against a public hearing. I don't remember the exact circumstance which he is referring to, but I can assure you that I have never once voted in any circumstance to prevent a public hearing. I do know that in 2018, the board did express concern over the mayor's budget for being what we considered unfair to the large number of employees in the city of Clinton. But I have no recollection whatsoever of ever voting against any kind of transparency. I'm a huge supporter of transparency, and I've been very vocal with the board about the need to be transparent.
All right, next question is a generic question, but it's an important question. We're going to ask you about how you see, what is your vision for the city of Clinton going forward for the next 5 years, 10 years, or whatever you want to look at. And Dr. Garrett, we'll let you go first.
Thank you. My vision for the city of Clinton is to make our city the very best city in the state of Mississippi. I think we should be trying to bring young people with families to our city. We should be encouraging retirees to come to our city and to stay in our city. But all of those things require housing. And probably one of the most significant problems facing the city of Clinton is the fact that we have a significant housing crisis. Right now, there are 27 houses for sale in Clinton, in a city of 27,000 people. So we have got to work more collaboratively with our developers, with our builders, with our realtors in Clinton, to make sure that that housing crisis is being solved so that we can lure families to our city to live here. I also think that we have got to do a better job of enhancing our older neighborhoods in Clinton, because all of these things are going to create rooftops. And if we can create rooftops in Clinton, then we can begin to attract more retail and industrial development to our city. And that is not going to happen unless we have rooftops. So my vision is to get those families here in Clinton, and to do that, we're going to have to solve our housing problem to begin with.
Mr. Ford, your vision for the city?
Yes, I think as long as we all work together, I mean all stakeholders, not just the Board of Aldermen and the mayor, but our business people, our school system, I think as long as we all work together, then the city will be in great shape. We need to use a lot of data as well to make sure that we are making the right decisions. We can't just go out and recruit a business because somebody says we need a steakhouse. We need to make sure there's data that supports that. And we need to make sure the city is in a position, as she stated, with rooftops that people can move here should a job become available. But, you know, a steady growth in our population will be positive. I think economic development is a huge thing that we need. We need retail, but we also need commercial. We also need industrial. And there's strategic ways that we go about that. And, you know, my opponent has voted against the funding of a full-time economic development director. I don't understand that. I think she then voted for the person, but funding it. And we need to stay positive and progressive and make sure that we are on the cutting edge of technology, data research. We're about to get the 2020 census data, and that is going to tell us a lot of things that we need to do. Now, I'm not a tech guy, but I do understand that technology is the moving force behind a lot of things. And that can help us with police, fire, economic development. So we need a strategic, positive plan to continue to push the city forward. I love that we're the third safest city in the state, but I'm competitive, and we need to be number one. And we can do that with some strategic moves following that.
Dr. Garrett, a response?
Yes, I would like to address Mr. Ford's comment about voting against the economic developer. In 2018, a majority of the board members developed an alternative budget to the mayor's budget because of some concerns that we had about portions of that budget. It included funding for economic development, but there was no plan whatsoever in place for economic development. So that was not a vote against economic development. It was an alternative budget that provided for economic development, but with a requirement that a plan be in place.
Mr. Ford, follow up?
Well, I went back and looked through the minutes over the last 4 years, and on that particular thing, I think it's very clear that she voted against the funding of a full-time economic development director. And I know there's other budget aspects to it, but the fact is the fact, and that is the way that I read it in the minutes, that she voted against the funding of the economic development director.
All right, we're going to move on to a topic that you've already both touched on, and it's important, obviously, to the citizens of Clinton. That's public safety. We're talking about not only the police, into the court system as well. The city obviously has to do everything it can to prevent criminal activity and prosecute those who cause harm. So let's talk about your plan for improving public safety in the city of Clinton. You talked about going from number 3 to number 1, Mr. Ford. What specifics can you offer?
Well, I think if you ask probably every police chief in Mississippi, they would all tell you that raises in cars are super important, and it's a need all across. I have asked several in the last week, and it all came back the same. So, you know, we've got to put resources, and we've got to be smart with those resources, that we can do these things that our police chief and our police department need. Also, technology, I'll go back to that again. And I know we have a lot of state-of-the-art technology, but there's additional technology that's out there that we need to make sure that we provide for the police department. Training is another. I think maybe the police chief has been to the FBI training in Virginia, but we don't have any others. And that's a free academy for 10 weeks. Now, we would have to pay the gas to get there and a uniform to get there. But this kind of training develops network. And it's not a conference that they go to for 10 weeks, like the Parks and Recreation or MML. I mean, they're in boot camp for 10 weeks, and they're learning the newest technology, the newest training, and it's free. It doesn't cost the taxpayers anything for us to be able to send them. Now, granted, we would be without those officers for 10 weeks. But when they come back, they have all this that they've learned, and the networking. I've heard of many of them that have been to the academy, they come back, they are looking for a drug dealer somewhere, and he's in Arkansas, and you come find out the officer in Arkansas that has made the arrest was at the academy with it. So the networking is huge. So training and technology is something that we need to do. Now, I want to point out again that she voted against hiring a full-time judge for the city of Clinton. We were contracting that out. That position was part-time. Now we do have, thanks to the other alderman, we do have a full-time judge. He's streamlining the activities that goes to the police department. And
all right, we're going to have to interrupt you there to keep things going. Dr. Garrett, as a member of the board, what have you done and what would you continue to do to improve public safety in Clinton?
First of all, we have probably put more emphasis, more funding, and more attention on public safety than any other issue. First of all, we hired an outstanding chief of police who grew up in Clinton and has done an absolutely wonderful job. We have expanded the number of police officers in our city. We have funded additional automobiles and equipment, including cameras on the entrances of our cities for public safety. We have expanded the court system, and where Mr. Ford is completely off base is in the same budget that we had concerns about economic development being planned for, was funding for a full-time judge, but there was no planning or information about how that would be done, whether that full-time judge would be over the entire court system, or any information that the board needed. And Mr. Ford is wrong that the rest of the board did not have concerns about this, because the majority of us did have concerns about the lack of information, and so consequently we did create an alternate budget, and eventually the mayor's budget did get passed, but it was only after significant conversation with the mayor about that. So I really resent the implications that I alone have voted against these things, because in the vast majority of cases, this was a majority decision.
Mr. Ford, to follow up?
Well, I mean, I think if there was additional information needed on that, you can certainly go to the mayor and ask for that. And again, I go back to, and I've been reviewing these minutes hard for the last month. I don't know of one thing, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, one thing that she has championed from the beginning and has taken it all the way through its process of vetting and then brought it to the Board of Aldermen, and it has gotten approved, and it is implemented, and it is helping the city now.
Yeah.
I just don't, I can't find one. Maybe there is. But, she mentioned the cameras. Well, we need more cameras. And, I just see a lot of dissension on the board, and we need to come together to do these things and understand, if information is needed, get it. I don't know how often she goes to the mayor's office. It's not but 100 yards or so probably from her office to City Hall.
All right, let's
I'm going every week.
have a response now.
Well, first of all, there have been numerous areas of interest that I've had, and I have pushed through to completion.
Well, what are those?
One of them is that I worked to develop a sister city relationship for Clinton. I worked with the Adjutant General of the National Guard and with his staff on building a sister city relationship between Clinton and the city of Zarafan, Uzbekistan, that was at the request of the National Guard. There have been numerous other opportunities that I have taken to push items before the Board of Aldermen. But as far as going to visit the mayor, it's really the mayor's responsibility to bring to the board the issues that he considers important, and then it's up to the Board of Aldermen to decide yes or no on those issues, and then if it's a no, then he can come back with
All right.
further recommendations.
Thank you for that. Let's move on to another major issue, not only in Clinton, but any city in America, and that's economic development. We've talked about it a little bit in some of your comments. Dr. Garrett, talk to me a little bit about, what you've done, what your plans are, if you get another term on the board, to promote economic development in the city of Clinton.
We have worked very diligently on economic development. We hired a very fine economic developer, Gabriel Prado, who has done an outstanding job. Part of the problem, of course, is that we're in Hinds County, and it's created more of a challenge for economic development than we would like. Again, another problem that we've been faced with has been the lack of rooftops in Clinton. The developers always look at not only the city of Clinton, but the area surrounding Clinton. But I do think if we can address the issue of housing in Clinton, we stand a much better chance of making Clinton the city we all want it to be in terms of dining experience and in terms of retail development. I really would love to see our Old Town area become what we wanted it to become, which has been a dining and retail destination. I think we should be working on the development of Clinton Boulevard. That is the gateway into our community, and it looks terrible, to be honest. We need to redevelop that whole Clinton Boulevard area with a median in the middle, with landscaping, and with other enhancements to that area. So that's another area that I think we need to look at in a significant way. We have spent a lot of time and a lot of effort in trying to bring economic development to Clinton, and we have had some success with some businesses, and we will continue to make sure that it's expanded in the future.
Mr. Ford, what are your plans if you get elected to bring additional retail, restaurant, industry to Clinton?
Well, I think first of all, a successful economic development plan is more than just adding rooftops. We've got to be balanced between commercial and industrial. And again, I mentioned the census data will be very helpful in us to develop a data-driven strategy to go get this. I was talking with a lady the other day, and she mentioned, why can't we have a Ruth Chris Steakhouse here in Clinton? Well, because they know what the median income is of our city, and it just won't work. And so, can we get another steakhouse? Sure we can, but we need to have data that supports that. So when those business people come in and wanting to find out information here, we need to have that readily available. And I think we have some of that now, and some of it we don't. But also, you know, making sure our city stays a good, clean, safe city. You know, we've got ordinances that perhaps need updated, and I plan to dig through those and find the antiquated ones and put those out and change them. You know, just at the last board meeting, there was an issue about containment. And I think Ms. Garrett spoke against that twice at that board meeting. And one of the topics was that 6 months ago, there was a similar request, and the city had to approve it because it was within the code of the ordinance. They've been antiquated. So after speaking against it twice, she then voted for it. And the reason was, well, maybe that was a mistake last time, and I shouldn't have voted against it. I should have voted against it then. My question is, if it was a problem 6 months ago, why didn't you take the initiative to go in and revamp the ordinance, create a new ordinance, get it approved by your colleagues, and then when the next one comes up that's an issue like that, it's very simple. No, we can't approve it. It's against the current ordinance.
All right, Dr. Garrett, your response.
Yes, again, Mr. Ford is completely wrong. In our board meeting last Tuesday, I did not at all speak against the container development. I, first of all, raised a question with Alderman Passion about his statement that if you vote for a conditional use once, then you have to vote for it the second time. The only thing I was raising was the fact that that is not true for a board. A conditional use is just that. It is a statement that you are going to take each one of those issues on a case-by-case basis. So my issue was with his statement, not with the container. I did vote for it because I also took the time to ask the young woman who wanted to do the development why she had chosen the shipping container as an alternative to construction. So again, you have totally misconstrued what I did in that meeting.
All right.
Well, I was looking again, but I recall you saying something about it needed to have a brick at the bottom and some of those kind of things. And the ordinance, you know, doesn't say that it has to. So I guess the point is, we need to, as an alderman, we've got to be leaders. And we've got to take initiative. And we have got to go work with the mayor. I know she said earlier it's the mayor's responsibility. Well, maybe so, but it's also ours to go over and talk with him and find out the information. There's a lot of times, and she knows this, and I do too, having been in it for 33 years, there's always another side of the story. But it seems that watching these and reading over the minutes and being involved on the Clinton advisory board and all that, it seems a lot of times we don't ask any of those questions to the night of the meeting. We could find out many of these answers before, and if we had a question about it, we could go over to the mayor's office, let's have a friendly, professional discussion about it, and then let's move forward. We're not always going to agree, but I will always listen.
All right, let's talk a little bit about, I guess, what has become a buzzword in government, and that's transparency, openness in government. Let me ask you, Mr. Ford, to talk to us a little bit about the demand that the public has for transparency in government, and whether you agree that the public has the right to know about all the actions of their leaders, and what would you do to enhance perhaps that openness in government here in Clinton?
Well, I'm 100% for the transparency in every aspect of it, not just on Tuesday night at the board meetings. If there's something a citizen wants to know about, I'm going to tell them all of it, 100% of it. I'm not going to vote against the public hearing, I can assure you that. But I will always be for the transparency. It's their money. It's not the board's money. It's not the mayor's money. It's the taxpayers' money that is being spent on all of these things. And sometimes decisions made are mistakes. I get it. But as long as we can tell them the answer is this, and whatever that is, I'm sorry, ma'am or sir, that you disagree with that. But that is the facts, and that's the facts that I am going to vote on. And we won't always agree, as I said, but I'll listen. And transparency is a key, not just here, it's a key in everything. And we need to also be good listeners. I think a lot of times we already have a mind made up. A lot of politicians do. They have their mind made up before it gets started, and people talk to them, but they don't listen. And there's a difference between hearing and listening. And I don't want to do that. I'm partially retired. I don't have time to do this. I know it is construed as a part-time position, pays $15,000. Hey, I will be available. I will go to meetings. I will go listen. And I will tell you exactly what the facts are, whether you like them or not.
Dr. Garrett, what needs to be done to improve communication and transparency in the city government?
Well, I am a huge supporter of transparency. During my many years in state governance, I was very involved in making sure that our board then and our board now observes the Open Meetings Act, and during the few times we do go into executive session, I always make sure that it meets those exemptions under the Open Meetings Act. I have developed long-time friendships and relationships with reporters over the years, and have always felt very comfortable in talking to them about the issues that we're dealing with. We have a wonderful marketing and public relations person in Mark Jones, who's with us today. He does a great job of sharing with the public everything that we do in the city. We also have a very fine newspaper. Clay Mansell's Clinton Courier does an excellent job of covering the news, and in recent years has even sent a reporter to not only our board meetings every month, but also to our work sessions. So in terms of what Mr. Ford said about attending the meetings, not only do we meet as a board twice a month, but we do have work sessions every month too, where we hash through all these issues. So it's not that we have to make regular treks to the mayor's office. We, as board members, have a responsibility to make decisions, and we do meet regularly in order to do that.
Mr. Ford, follow-up.
Well, I would just simply ask, how many times have you been to the mayor's office in the last 4 years?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but let me say this. It's not my responsibility to make individual treks to the mayor's office to get information. It is my responsibility to work with the board to try to come to consensus on what is important to the citizens of Clinton. And I will tell you that I'm not the only board member who has expressed concerns about private conversations with the mayor.
You want to continue your follow-up?
Yeah, I will. I mean, and so obviously we completely disagree on that theory. I do think it's the responsibility of the alderman, especially Alderman-At-Large, to be in constant contact with the mayor's office on what's going on. The mayor's there all day, every day, getting information. He is working it. He's going to know things that the aldermen are not going to know probably ahead of time. Aldermen are part-time. He's there 365 days as the mayor, and the aldermen are not. So seeking out information from the mayor is not some negative. It's going over there to be informed and getting involved in all of these things that are going on. We have to do that. And, you know, I just think the initiative of all of the aldermen would behoove them to go and visit with the mayor, if not weekly, at least monthly. I know about the work sessions. I've been in a bazillion of them. But I also know in working with mayors across Mississippi that you can get a lot of information from them just going and sitting down and have a conversation.
Dr. Garrett, I think you have about 30 more seconds left on your response. You didn't use if you want to care to do it.
I wish Mr. Ford had talked to someone other than just the mayor. Because I think if he had talked to the other aldermen, he would have a much better perspective on why the board has chosen to operate in the way it has. It's certainly not that we have not desired information from the mayor. It's not that we haven't asked for information from the mayor. But if you will talk to the other board members, I think they will give you a better understanding of why the board has functioned in the way that it has in recent years.
I think I've talked to all of them.
All right, our final question for the day is involving Parks and Recreation. I know, Mr. Ford, that's something that's near and dear to your heart, but I want to ask you, here in the city of Clinton, how would you describe, how would you rate maybe the Parks and Recreation programs, and what specifically needs to be done to make improvements?
Well, I don't want to necessarily give it a grade, unless you're going to have a direct comparison to somewhere else. Now, I do know, as I think probably all of our viewers understand, that, we have to keep up with our neighboring cities. And there are some things that we need to do in our park system. I know the Lions Club Park, man, that is a really super nice park. Kids Town's been renovated. I understand all of that. But I was out at Traceway. I rode out there. I go quite often, but I went specifically to look for things that needed improving. And there are a lot of little things that need to be improved out there. Of course, there are bigger things like synthetic infields where we won't have lane outs. But those things cost a lot of money. But there are some smaller things that could continuously do. And I'm not sure that the staff has time to do all the little things that, in my opinion, are the things that make you first class. And so I would research that. I would talk with the mayor about what we can do to add staff to Park and Rec so that we can take care of a lot of little things. There are potholes in every instant, every entrance of where people get out of the car and pull their wagon to all of them. We've all known that Clinton soccer is really on the map. Well, do you know they don't have a paved parking spot for soccer? It is all still gravel, and here we are in 2021. And I understand that there was some money that could have been allocated for paving out there, and everybody said, or most people said, that it needed to go on the streets. Well, I'm for street paving too, don't get me wrong. But I would dare say that in a week's time, especially with tournaments on the weekend, there's probably more people that travel on that parking that are on some of the streets that the city has said needs paving. So I'm going to be a complete champion for Parks and Recreation. That's what I've done all my life.
All right, Dr. Garrett, what sort of improvements do you see that need to be made in regard to Parks and Recreation?
Well, first of all, we have spent an inordinate amount of time on Parks and Recreation, and we have spent a considerable amount of money refurbishing the parks in our city. We have a new $1 million Lions Club Park, which is the first handicapped accessible park, I believe, in the state. We have refurbished, to some extent, Traceway Park, certainly Kids Town Park, and we're working currently on Robinson Park, and we have built a dog park in the last year or so. So a lot of time, attention, and money has gone into Parks and Recreation for the city. I do believe that we are still not where we need to be with Traceway Park. This is a park that's visited every weekend by hundreds and thousands of families, not only in Clinton, but from all over the state and outside of the state. So I do think there's some areas of Traceway Park that definitely need further development. We were not able in this last budget year to make improvements to the concession stands that we wanted to be able to make, but we are working on finding a way to do that in the next budget.
You have 60 seconds for a follow-up, Mr. Ford.
Yes, yeah, Lion Club's park is great, but it is not the first one in the state. I mean, several have been built. In fact, I was part of one being built about 20 years ago, 25 years ago in Tupelo. But it is nice to have. These tournaments are important. They will drive economics here, be an economic engine for our city. I came out of retirement 4 years ago to go to Brandon and manage the new Brandon Amphitheater and build and manage the 23 baseball, softball fields there. When I retired in July, we were hosting 42 out of 52 weekends in Brandon, Mississippi in tournaments. And we're not doing that yet in Clinton. And so I want to continue to help for us to be economic minded in what we host in Clinton. And I call that the weekend park and rec. And then Monday through Friday, we need to focus on what our kids here in Clinton need to do, want to do, what they're playing on is safe, and then we also continue on with programs.
All right, 60 seconds follow-up.
I totally agree with you that we do need to make the improvements to Traceway Park, and I believe we will focus on that in the coming term. I believe we'll also focus more on biking paths, walking paths, and other recreational activities for people that maybe don't have children, who maybe want to enjoy the recreational benefits of our city without going to a park. So I think we, over the coming 4 years, will place a considerable amount of interest on sidewalks, on walking trails, and biking trails in our city.
All right, those are the final questions we have. Each candidate now will have up to 2 minutes to make a closing statement, and we'll start with Mr. Ford.
Okay, well, again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I mean, to me, this is what government is about. You know, we can agree to disagree sometimes, but I think you can plainly see the differences between the two of us and how I would vote and support things versus how she does or how she would. The public service and economic development and parks and recreation will be my focus. And I will put a lot of focus on parks and recreation because every position that is in the Parks and Recreation Department, I've held it sometime in my career, except secretary. So I know what they're dealing with, and I know what the users want. I know what soccer needs. I know what it takes to bring tournaments in here. And I'm going to push and I'm going to push and I'm going to push to get that. Yes, we do need some bike and hike trails. You know, what has she done to get them here? There's funds out there and grants all over the place to make applications. We can't just expect the mayor to do it. If I get elected, I'm going to be right down at MWFP looking at what land and water conservation funds have and the recreational trails program. We can do those with 80-20 money. I mean, 80% by them, 20% by the state, by the city of Clinton. And if we do a lot of the groundwork with our own equipment, you can apply that as in kind. So we could possibly build some of this stuff almost without any money out of the budget or from the taxpayer. These are initiative kind of things that I think an Alderman-At-Large especially, or any of them for that matter, needs to champion, and we need to go do this. You know, the mayor is certainly a busy man, and yes, you're going to need the mayor to be behind you, but I want to be proactive, I want to be progressive, I want to take the initiative, I want to help the other aldermen, I want to help the mayor, I want to work with the department heads, and let's get away from third safest city and let's be.
All right. Thank you. Dr. Garrett, your final statement.
Well, in conclusion, first of all, I want to thank the League of Women Voters and also to our moderator, Randy Bell, for making it possible for the citizens of Clinton to hear from the candidates. As Mr. Ford pointed out, we do have very different perspectives on what the role of the board is and the role of the Alderman-At-Large is. As I mentioned to you in my opening statement, I have an extensive background in governance and in board service. I understand probably better than anyone on the board, the role that the Board of Aldermen and the Alderman-at-Large should play in our city. We are the legislative branch of government. The mayor is the executive branch of government. Yes, absolutely, we should work together for the betterment of our city. Yes, we should have conversations, which we are doing on a regular basis. But at the same time, a board can't just be a rubber stamp for the agenda of the mayor. We have got to do what we believe is in the best interest of the citizens of Clinton. Certainly it's possible for all of us to have different opinions and to come together to make the decisions that are in the best interest of the city. I believe that over the last 4 years, not only I, but the other board members have worked diligently to make sure that we were making decisions in the best interest of the city. Yes, sometimes boards disagree, but absolutely, at the end of the day, we can come together, and we have come together for the betterment of Clinton.
Thank you, Dr. Garrett, and thank you, Mr. Ford, for being here today.
Yes, thank you.
And to all of the voters in Clinton, I want to remind you the primary election is Tuesday, April 6th. Go to the polls for the Republican primary. Thank you, candidates, for sharing your views today. We want our citizens to be informed voters when they go to the polls. So thank you so much for participating, and thanks everyone for helping. Go vote. Thank you.
For sure.